It all began when I moved into the quiet suburban neighborhood, eager to start anew after a turbulent past. The house next door was old and decrepit, its windows boarded up and its garden overgrown, like a forgotten relic of another era. Curiosity got the better of me, and one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I decided to take a closer look. The gate creaked open ominously as I entered the yard, a shiver running down my spine as I felt the weight of the house's history. As I peered through a crack in the boarded windows, I caught a glimpse of him, my neighbor, a man with haunted eyes and a hunched back. His name was Mr. Thompson, and the whispers around town painted a picture of a once great war hero, scarred by the horrors he had witnessed. Rumors of his reclusive nature and eccentric behavior only fueled my fascination, and I became determined to uncover the truth behind the enigma. Late one night, I heard strange noises emanating from Mr. Thompson's house, eerie whispers and the faint echo of footsteps. Ignoring the voice of reason that urged me to stay away, I found myself drawn to the house once more, my heart pounding in my chest. A dim light flickered in one of the windows, casting long shadows that seemed to dance in the moonlight, and I couldn't resist the urge to investigate. With cautious steps, I ventured closer to the window, my breath catching as I caught sight of Mr. Thompson within, his eyes glazed over as if lost in another time. I watched in awe and trepidation as he moved about the room, his movements slow and deliberate, like a phantom navigating the ethereal realm. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over me, but I was unable to tear my gaze away from the haunting scene before me. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson's eyes met mine through the window, and a jolt of fear shot through me, as if he had peered into the depths of my soul. Time seemed to stand still as we locked eyes, the weight of his gaze bearing down on me like a leaden shroud. And then, in an instant, he was gone, disappearing into the shadows as if he had never been there at all. I stumbled back, my heart racing, my mind reeling from the encounter with the enigmatic figure next door. Sleep eluded me that night as I lay in bed, my thoughts consumed by the mysteries of Mr. Thompson and the chilling events I had witnessed. The days that followed were marked by a growing obsession, an insatiable need to uncover the truth behind the man and his haunted house. My inquiries around town yielded little information, but the more I dug, the more I became convinced that there was something sinister lurking beneath the surface. One stormy night, as thunder echoed through the darkness, I gathered my courage and approached Mr. Thompson's front door. My knuckles rapped against the wood, the sound echoing like a drumbeat in the eerie silence, and for a moment, I questioned the wisdom of my actions. Just as I was about to retreat, the door creaked open, revealing Mr. Thompson's gaunt figure framed by the dim light from within. His eyes held a mixture of surprise and something else, a glint of danger that sent a shiver down my spine. "What do you want?" his voice rasped, the words laden with an undercurrent of threat that set my nerves on edge. I stammered out an explanation, my words stumbling over each other as I tried to convey my curiosity and desire to understand. Mr. Thompson's gaze bore into me, and I could feel his scrutiny as if he were peeling back the layers of my soul. "You know not what you seek," he finally spoke, his words carrying an air of warning that only fueled my determination. "There are things best left buried, things that should never see the light of day," he continued, his voice a haunting whisper. Undeterred by his ominous words, I pressed on, my curiosity morphing into an all-consuming obsession that clouded my judgment. I delved into dusty archives and scoured old newspapers, piecing together fragments of Mr. Thompson's past, a war hero, revered by some, feared by others. As my research deepened, I unearthed tales of his heroic deeds on the battlefield, stories of bravery and sacrifice that seemed at odds with the man I had encountered. The more I uncovered, the more the pieces of the puzzle refused to fit together, leaving me with a gnawing sense of unease that settled deep within my gut. Late one night, as a storm raged outside, I found myself drawn back to Mr. Thompson's house, my footsteps guided by an irresistible force. The front door creaked open once more, as if welcoming me into its enigmatic depths, and I stepped over the threshold with trepidation. The interior was shrouded in shadows, illuminated only by the occasional flicker of candlelight that danced eerily across the walls. "Mr. Thompson?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty corridors, but there was no response, only the haunting sound of my own words rebounding off the walls. I ventured deeper into the house, guided by an invisible thread that seemed to pull me toward a room at the end of a long hallway. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit chamber adorned with artifacts from a bygone era, faded photographs, tattered flags, and a dusty uniform. And there, seated in a worn armchair, was Mr. Thompson, his eyes fixed on a sepia-toned photograph that rested in his trembling hands. "You shouldn't be here," his voice quivered, a mixture of sadness and anger lacing his words as he looked up at me, his eyes haunted by memories. I moved closer, drawn by an inexplicable bond that seemed to transcend time and space, my heart aching for the pain etched across his weathered features. "What happened, Mr. Thompson?" I implored, my voice soft and filled with genuine concern as I reached out a hand to touch his arm. He recoiled at my touch, his eyes widening with a mixture of fear and desperation, as if my presence had triggered something long buried within him. "You don't understand," he murmured, his gaze drifting back to the photograph, his fingers tracing the outlines of the figures captured within. As I studied the photograph, a chill swept through the room, and I felt a presence, a spectral energy that seemed to envelop us both. The figures in the photograph came to life, their faces contorted in agony as they reached out, their eyes filled with a silent plea for release. "They're trapped," Mr. Thompson whispered, his voice barely audible, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and sorrow. And then, as if guided by an otherworldly force, I understood. The house itself was a prison, a vessel for the restless souls of those who had perished. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer, and I knew that I was the only one who could help, the only one who could unravel the dark secrets that bound Mr. Thompson and the tormented spirits together. Determination surged through me, eclipsing my fear, as I made a vow to free the trapped souls and put an end to the cycle of suffering that had plagued the haunted house for decades. Days turned into weeks, and I immersed myself in research and ancient rituals, seeking a way to break the curse that held the spirits captive. Mr. Thompson, though initially resistant, began to open up, sharing the harrowing truth of his wartime experiences and the guilt that had followed him home. Together, we embarked on a journey into the unknown, facing malevolent forces and uncovering long-buried traumas that had festered for generations. The nights grew longer, the air heavy with anticipation, as we prepared for the final confrontation with the malevolent entity that had bound the souls within the house. Armed with incantations and talismans, we ventured into the heart of darkness, facing down the ancient evil that had thrived on suffering and despair. The battle was fierce, the very walls of the house trembling with the intensity of the struggle, as we fought to sever the ties that held the spirits captive. And then, in a blinding burst of light and energy, the curse was broken, the malevolent entity banished from the house, and the trapped souls were finally set free. Exhausted but triumphant, Mr. Thompson and I emerged from the ordeal forever changed, our bond forged through the crucible of darkness and redemption. The old man who lived next door was a shadowy figure, his presence casting a pall over our once peaceful neighborhood. With a scowl etched onto his face, he exuded an air of anger and resentment that seemed to permeate the very air around him. Whispers circulated about his past as a prison warden, tales of his cruelty and ruthless demeanor haunting the minds of those who crossed his path. Whether these stories were true or mere exaggerations, one thing was certain: he was a man to be feared. Strange noises emanated from his house, eerie sounds that seemed to defy explanation. Creaks and groans echoed through the night, as if the very walls held secrets they were unwilling to divulge. Curiosity gnawed at me, driving me to investigate the source of these unsettling sounds. With each passing night, My resolve grew stronger, until I found myself standing at the threshold of his foreboding abode. The interior was as unsettling as the exterior, a maze of dimly lit hallways and heavy drapes that seemed to shroud the truth in darkness. But it was the basement that held the most ominous secrets. My flashlight's beam cut through the darkness as I descended the rickety stairs, the air growing colder with each step. And then, I stumbled upon a chilling discovery: a series of meticulously crafted traps, designed to ensnare anyone foolish enough to venture into the depths. Fear coiled around my heart as I realized that the strange noises were not the product of a haunted house, but the sinister creations of the old man himself. It was a chilling revelation, one that sent shivers racing down my spine. I was trapped in a predator's den, surrounded by snares that seemed to have been designed to evoke terror. Panic surged through me as one of the traps closed around my ankle, its snare-like grip digging into my flesh. With a surge of adrenaline, I managed to free myself, my fingers slick with blood as I pried the mechanism open. Fleeing the basement, I vowed to avoid the old man's property, my sleepless nights haunted by the horrors I had witnessed. But the nightmare was far from over. Each night, I found myself watching him through my bedroom window, binoculars trained on his every move. His routines were bizarre, his actions more suited to a madman than a mere neighbor. One evening, as I peered through the binoculars, I locked eyes with the old man. A chill swept over me, the intensity of his gaze sending a shiver down my spine. It was as if he knew I had been watching him, as if he could sense my presence even from a distance. Panic gripped me, and I tore my gaze away from his malevolent stare. Shadows seemed to dance around his property, taking on eerie shapes in the moonlight. He had transformed his once tranquil home into a living nightmare, a fortress of terror. And then, one fateful night, I found myself ensnared in his sinister web. As I wandered too close to his yard, a trap sprung, its snare-like mechanism clamping down around my ankle. Pain seared through me as I struggled to break free, the old man's wicked laughter echoing in my ears. With sheer determination, I managed to wrench myself from the trap's grip and stumbled away. I had narrowly escaped his clutches, but the encounter left me shaken and terrified. It was as if the old man's malevolence had infected every inch of his property, turning it into a realm of torment. And then, as if taunting me, I saw his eyes in a window, eyes that glowed with a malevolent gleam, fixated on me with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. The mystery deepened when a neighbor's cat vanished without a trace. Rumors spread like wildfire, and I couldn't help but suspect that the old man was behind the animal's disappearance. It was a moonless night when I witnessed him dig a hole in his garden. His actions were furtive, shrouded in darkness, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something sinister beneath the earth. The old man's actions intensified my unease, solidifying my belief that he was a harbinger of darkness. He seemed to revel in the fear he instilled in those around him. The terrors continued, escalating with each passing day. The old man's home had become a living nightmare, a place of horror and malevolence. And then, as if mocking my suspicions, I saw him one night, digging yet another hole in his garden. My mind raced with gruesome possibilities, wondering if he was hiding something more sinister than a missing cat. His twisted games took a toll on my sanity, my nights consumed by fear and paranoia. The once serene neighborhood had transformed into a sinister landscape ruled by the old man's warped desires and dark intentions. But just as I thought the nightmare couldn't escalate further, a new layer of terror unfurled. I stumbled upon a hidden room in his house, a chamber of horrors filled with grotesque trophies and disturbing artifacts. The realization hit me like a freight train. The old man's past as a prison warden had left a lasting mark on his soul, warping his mind and turning him into a twisted collector of suffering. Night after night, I watched in horror as he carried out his malevolent activities, his once calm demeanor replaced by a maniacal glee. Then, the chilling truth came to light. The old man had been luring unsuspecting victims into his web, capturing them in his snares and subjecting them to unspeakable torment. And as I uncovered his depravity, I knew I had to take action. With the evidence of his crimes in hand, I contacted the authorities, who swiftly apprehended him. But even behind bars, his chilling legacy haunted the neighborhood. The horror he had wrought left scars that wouldn't easily fade. I moved away from that place, leaving behind the horrors that had haunted my every step. The old man's face, contorted with rage and madness, continued to haunt my dreams. In a new town, far from the clutches of the old man, I tried to rebuild my life. But the scars he had left ran deep, a constant reminder of the darkness that can reside within even the most unassuming of neighbors. As time went on, I couldn't help but wonder what had become of him. Had justice truly been served, or had he found a way to continue his reign of terror from the confines of his cell?